Hi everybody, Laura here from We Evolve, and I wanted to do another video blog that was about our last class. So our last class, we talked about how we were conditioned and groomed to constantly want and need and attach ourselves to things that are living outside of our true self, that are living outside in our external reality. Even things like enlightenment or world peace or the end of all suffering or our true love to come into our life is still looking outside of ourselves. And so we went and looked a little deeper into how it is that we do create our reality in the way that we were conditioned to, looking outside of ourselves, utilizing all of our senses. We looked a little bit more deeply into our senses and saw how they could trip us up into thinking that what we are using to create our lives with isn't really capable of creating the lives we want to create. Okay, so for example, we have the capacity to see the limitations of our senses instead of thinking that our senses is what in fact does create our reality. So for instance, our eyes see, but our eyes don't really see unless there's a form for them to gaze upon. And then even that's not necessarily true because our eyes would need a form to gaze upon. But in order for our eyes to be able to see the form, we need a specific amount of light, which is always changing. That form in which our eyes are gazing upon, the space in which the form is, for example, a starlit sky and a beautiful white moon in a summer night, that space in which the moon is there is always changing. The space in which the stars are positioned is always changing. The timing of when we gaze upon the moon is always changing. So our eyes don't just see, it's the coupling or the interbeing of eyes and form, okay? So our ears hear sound, and so we have the sense of ear consciousness, the sense of hearing. But our ears aren't necessarily ears unless there's a sound to hear. So our ears coupled with sound create ear consciousness. Our nose doesn't know it's a nose unless it has the ability or something else outside of itself to smell. And so then we have nose consciousness. Same thing with our tongue. It tastes, so we have taste consciousness. And our body needs to come in contact with itself or a form or another person or another object in order to know that it is a body. The object in which the body came in contact with is an object of mind. So our mind has thoughts that have objects of mind that we've been conditioned and groomed to believe are true. So you can see that if I'm gazing up at the moon and the starlit sky on a summer night, that I am subjectively utilizing my awareness of senses to objectify the moon. So my subjective consciousness is giving rise to an objective consciousness with the intermingling or the interbeing of sight and form and mind and thought of mind and feelings. If I get goosebumps all over my body of the beauty that it is that I think about when I look at the moon. So all of the senses they're not separate entities, and all of the consciousnesses, the ear consciousness, the eye consciousness, the consciousness of the moon, they all have to interbe and intermingle together as well. They're entangled. So that in essence, when I am looking up at the moon, what I'm really seeing is the consciousness of my mind. And so here we are, believing that our senses create our reality, when in fact, I just said and showed you that they don't. They don't have the ability to accurately depict our reality. We have more senses than just those. We have a labyrinth in our ear that's responsible for telling us the position of our body in space. Our skin has motor neurons, sensory neurons all over it, and each sensory neuron has a different job. one to tell us temperature, one to tell us pain, one to tell us the weight of something that sits in our skin. So here we are looking and believing that our senses depict our reality, which isn't necessarily true, and that reality is true and real. So what do? As we're looking for world peace or enlightenment outside of ourselves, we can begin to understand and see that it's not out there is where we need to be looking. Instead, we need to be looking within, and within instead, to be steady within, to look within, to have an insight, to see within what is wanting to emerge, what is true for us in the creation of our reality. Enlightenment is not something that can be understood by the mind. Enlightenment occurs in the space of no mind. Enlightenment occurs in the silent stillness of nothingness. So that which we seek for outside of ourselves, if I go to that next class, if I hear that next teacher, if, I look up to the sky 5 times a month, it's not out there. It's going within. To turn away from our senses, to let go of what we believe to be true because that's what we've been groomed or conditioned to believe, and instead to look within, because our senses and our body are so connected that our mind is just a further interpretation of our body, and our body is a further interpretation of our mind. So we need to let the identification of the body go, the identification of the mind go. We need to let go of the consciousness of the mind and the consciousness of the sight and the consciousness of the body and the consciousness of the objects of mind and our objective consciousness and our subjective consciousness. And we need to get quiet and sit still with no direction, not needing to get anything, hold on to anything, attain anything, need anything. Because once we actually do receive something that we're wanting to have within ourselves, more happiness, more peace, more joy, more love, more feeling of unification with the rest of the universe, a higher vibe, a higher level of frequency in the way in which we relate to our life. As soon as we get that, what do? We want to hold on to it. How can we hold on to something that's not ours in the first place, that doesn't belong to a person, but that belongs to the allness that is there for us in the silence and in the spaciousness of everything? So let go of even the wanting of enlightenment, or the need to hold on to enlightenment, or to get to the next situation where you feel like you've had an awakening. To be free of the want and the attachment to holding on to the receiving of something. To be aimless. To be aimless and still and quiet and free. To look within, because anything and everything that I want is right here within me. Enlightenment cannot be understood by the mind. Enlightenment occurs in the spaciousness, the silent, vast spaciousness of a higher consciousness, one that our senses alone or intermingled altogether could never understand. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you guys soon. Take care and have a glorious day. Bye-bye.